Whew, all right. Berserk chapter 370. Wow. Okay, so I've talked about this last 10 to 15 chapters, in my opinion, being one of the strongest stretches throughout the entire story. And this chapter specifically was a bit of a nail in the coffin moment, especially regarding certain confirmations and where I thought the story was really going to go. Although there is a lot more to be seen, but we'll get into that. I find it very interesting and appropriate as well that the chapter starts off with this beautiful colored page with some of our characters, and with the caption, "For a while, peaceful days like this were the norm." And I think there was that time before Miura passed away where a lot of people were complaining that, you know, Berserk just didn't feel the same as it used to, that the story was it didn't feel the same for certain readers. And it's interesting that I didn't see that opinion anymore as soon as Miura did pass away, but it is one of those things where I think that was necessary for the story to take that sort of direction, this sort of breath of fresh air, where all of these positive feels and moments were happening, although not really, because despite the fact that Casca had got her mind back, that instantly turned into a heartbreaking scenario as well. And I think we all should have known better that that was not going to last for a very long time. Me, and more specifically real life Ryan, speculating for a long time that the Moonlight Child might end up on the island, and well, we end up where we are now. So chapter 370 opens up with everybody boarding the boat, Guts' body being carried onto the boat by multiple people, as I can imagine he is extremely heavy, especially including the armor. And then we get to see Serpico looking for Farnese, and it actually confirms something that I was speculating on in the last chapter, and that I got mistaken. Puck did not disappear in the chapter, it was simply his brothers, because again, I was wondering if Puck, he was part of the world before the merging of the astral and the physical world. It would be weird if he disappeared as well, although that would have been even more brutal for Guts. But luckily, Puck is still around, with a caption at the bottom of the page saying, "Did hope for peace die with Elf Island?" Again, this is something that I've been basically saying a lot in the recent videos, recent chapter reviews, is just the crossroads Guts' character has truly been at. The ability, or if not, the possibility of living a life of peace now, if that's something that would be possible, and if so, if it's something he would really want to do. Well, now he doesn't even have the choice. Serpico then mentions where is Guts and Casca, and Farnese breaks down into tears, crying, feeling that she was useless and incapable of doing anything. Which, considering how much of a caretaker role Farnese took in the story and the relationship she had with Casca, as well as knowing the importance and how much Casca means to Guts and her sentiments towards Guts, this is definitely a proper emotional response, because, I mean, my goodness. And I think this is just going to prompt Farnese further and further to become stronger with her magic, and we'll see her play a bigger role regarding that as well. But considering how she feels about it, it's going to be very interesting later on in the chapter to see how Guts feels. We then see Shirke herself feeling a bit distraught regarding the whole situation, and then Serpico as well. For a brief moment, we see his face and sort of probably his feelings of being useless as well regarding the whole situation. We then see Morta. It's always a good chapter when we see Morta, basically saying that she found them, she was looking for them, that they were okay, and then she quickly grabs Farnese and gets her and tries to have her help with the healing magic and helping some of the people that were injured throughout the whole fiasco. And that I think is a really good moment for Farnese, you know, her being distraught, feeling like she was useless, and now instantly being put to being productive, as well as Shirke. Then her spirits lift a little bit, saying that she's willing to help as well. We then get the most important and essential part throughout the entire chapter, a good contrast to what we just have here with Shirke and Farnese, although feeling distraught, their spirits being able to be lifted a little bit regarding helping others, as then Morta says, "Earlier, your friend was brought here, the one in black." Of course, talking about Guts, she then says, "Yes, but he was out of it. He kept gazing and mumbling something. He looked like a broken man to me." She then says what we've all been saying as we've seen these events transpire in front of our eyes, and that's essentially, even though he's settled down, it's going to be a very bad idea if we just leave him to be. Well, she uses the words, "if that thing is left to go berserk." Maybe a little too on the nose for me, but to be fair, that is low-key like the most appropriate word to use in that scenario, so it's fine. I absolutely love the artwork in that page, by the way, but really the consequences of Guts, it left to the state that he has, is only shown to us further and further, as then Roderick is on board, basically asking for where Guts is, and he's saying we can't leave him by himself, and he's screaming out to him, telling him not to do anything stupid. And he's banging on the door, and then we get to see Guts looking at his sword, and we get a close-up of his hand, and instead of him reaching out for the sword, he simply falls back and collapses on the other side of the room, letting the sword collapse to the floor. And then we finally get that moment, that introspective scene of dialogue for Guts. And although it's short, I think it's probably one of the most powerful statements, and again, as I've been saying, a huge turning point for Guts, and just another development to his character and his personality and all the vast emotions we've seen from him. But this time he says, "All this time, when I couldn't depend on anything else, anyone else, when I had nothing, I still had your strength to hold on to." And we get this beautiful sequence of Guts during his time before the Band of the Hawk, with the Band of the Hawk, after he had defeated 100 men, and then during the Bonfire of Dreams. And then we see the Dragon Slayer there enveloped in darkness, as Guts says, "You were all I had." And then the chapter ends with a faint light lost in the dark. That is one of the key things that I did talk about in some of the recent videos, is the importance of Guts' sword. The fact that he was incapable of landing a single hit on Griffith. His sword, obviously, of course, the literal thing has always served as the thing that he could hold on to, cling on to. And one panel that they didn't show here, but I thought would have been very appropriate, would have been during his time as a kid, after the situation with Donovan, where he was holding the sword tightly. For Guts, that is truly all he had, especially when you consider the fact that the sword is also a representation of his own will, his own strength, his own means, everything he did just to survive, and then everything he had gone through. When all else failed him, he had his own strength. And to see that that is no longer useful, to see Guts just, instead of settling down and then lashing out in rage as he did after the eclipse, now to see him completely broken down and defeated, again, was something that I alluded to, that I think we would see more despair from him. When I first read this chapter, I just went in 370 and that was it. And then the second time reading it, I went all the way back a few chapters throughout Griffith showing up on the island through up till 370, and I was almost moved to tears, because if anything, for at least those who followed Berserk for a while now, Guts is probably one of the best representations of just the human will, the human spirit, and a fictional example of somebody who's willing to push through and never give up, no matter how dire the circumstances are. To see him this defeated, as Mortis says, a broken man, is soul-destroying to witness. And I'm very interested to see how long he might stay in this state. Separating the art from the artist here, I think one of the strongest stretches in Rurouni Kenshin is near the end of the story, where something, obviously very different circumstances, but regardless, we see Kenshin, this character who we're not used to seeing in such a way, completely defeated, broken down, almost in this state of just morbid depression. And seeing him rise from that, I think, is what truly solidified that story for me. And so I'm going to be very excited to see what Guts has to go through internally, how the other members of his crew will try to help him, or if he's going to alienate himself from them and go into this isolation for a moment, not allowing them to help him at all. And again, that final bit where it says a faint light lost in the dark, as Guts has alluded to before, his life, his walk of life, constantly being surrounded by darkness. And the only real lights he's had in his life as a constant has been Casca for a moment, which had just been taken from him. But one that has stayed from his childhood till now was his sword, which, as I said, I think represents a lot more than just the slab of iron he's been swinging around. The inner feelings of Guts was short, but it was to the point, and I think it did its job perfectly, and very fitting for a character like Guts. I think it's rare for him to have moments where he's truly very wordy, if you will. So I think that this was a very, very good chapter, and one that, as the series goes on, we're going to look back on as one of the most important regarding how Berserk ended up going as a series. As always, let me know your thoughts on this chapter down in the comment section below, and if you haven't left a like, make sure you leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. And as always, this has been the Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.